Good Tuesday afternoon to you. Hope you're having a great day. Thanks for joining us on Sports4CLE. A little later in the show, we will be joined by Jake Underwood, talking a little bit of Indians getting ready for a quick two-game series in St. Louis against the Cardinals. But we will begin by talking Browns. We will be joined by Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. You can see all of his work there. And the Zone Coverage Podcast. Let's welcome in Scott Petrak. Scott, as always, appreciate the time. Thanks very much. Preseason times released for the games. Let's start there. So, first game, Jaguars. The Browns will be there for Urban Meyer's NFL debut in Jacksonville. That's a Saturday, 7 o'clock. Giants is a home game, 1 o'clock on Sunday, August 22nd. And then prime time, Sunday Night Football at Atlanta, 8 o'clock the 29th. So they slide into that last preseason national television window.
Yeah, it feels like there's something kind of noteworthy about each of the games. You know, the first one is Urban Meyer and probably Trevor Lawrence's debut with the Jaguars and in the NFL. So there's some juice to that. Then you get a home game, the only home game of the preseason, and it's at 1 o'clock, which is kind of a weird start time for preseason against the Giants. Only chance for fans to see the Browns in the preseason. And then you go prime time to end it, and who knows how Kevin Stefanski's going to, use his guys during the preseason. There's only 3 games. You don't want to get guys hurt. Who knows how he's going to use guys, but that could be the game where you see the most from your starters. So I think for a preseason probably doesn't mean a whole lot. At least there's something to sink your teeth into.
The other thing is it's important to note 2 weeks between the last preseason game and the beginning of the regular season. That's a little different. You know what? This format probably is something that the players like. I know the 4 preseason games, a lot of them, nobody played in the 4th. The 3rd was kind of the dress rehearsal. So it seems to make some sense.
It does. And I think, when there used to be 4, like you said, a lot of the guys wouldn't play, but the coaches still had to kind of prepare for that game. And it took up 3 or 4 days of practice time, leading into the game and then after the game, the downtime. So not having that 4th game this year, I think it really will allow Kevin Stefanski and coaches across the league to really ramp up for that opener. So just 2 full weeks between the game against Atlanta and then the opener in Kansas City. Cutdown day is the Tuesday after that final game, so there's a little bit of time there. I like the changes. I think the coaches will like the changes. And really nobody cared about that 4th game. The only issue is now you have 2 weeks where you're kind of really dying to get to that opener.
So let's shift focus. OTAs underway out in Berea, week 2 of OTAs, if you will. What do you expect from this round of OTAs? And we've seen some of the names that are there, some of the guys that are present. But what do you expect from the OTAs? I know everybody can go and see what's going on a little bit tomorrow as far as OTAs go.
Yeah, we'll be out there tomorrow. Hopefully the weather holds off. I think it'll look a lot like it did last week. Kevin Stefanski promised the guys that if they showed up, it would be a safe environment for them to work in and practice in. So, I don't think you're going to see much. I don't think you're going to see anything full speed. You'll see the guys going through individual drills. You'll see installation of the offense and defense. You'll see some 7-on-7 and 11-on-11, but nothing too physical. So, it's just kind of a ramp-up period. It's a time for, especially guys on defense, to get to know each other, get to know each other better, like John Johnson III, the free agent safety that they signed, is in camp this week. And it's probably the first time, or it is the first time, he'll be on the field with guys like Denzel Ward and Myles Garrett, Greedy Williams. Maybe Grant Delpit's out there, but he's not really practicing coming off that Achilles. Same thing for Nickelback Troy Hill. So it's just kind of a way to get your feet wet. And for the guys there, kind of ease into minicamp, which is next week, the mandatory minicamp, Tuesday through Thursday. But even then, I don't think we're going to see a whole lot of we're just not going to see a whole lot of physical practice going on. We'll see mental work. We'll see some physical reps. but it's all about getting to training camp healthy and just kind of getting acclimated.
So you mentioned a couple of the guys. So Jedrick Wills is in town. That's another guy that's present for this round. John Johnson, Troy Hill. We saw some of the photos released by the Browns from OTAs that we showed you as well. How important is it for the new guys just to kind of get out and get familiar with the lay of the land and their teammates?
Yeah, I think there's something to be said for that. My overall view is it's not that important, especially because there are virtual meetings, right? So these guys are learning in the classroom. They're going through the offensive installation and defensive installation. They're learning the playbooks. So I don't think from a big picture standpoint, it's hugely important for these guys to be out there in late May and early June. But if you're one of those new guys on defense, or even one of the holdovers on defense who is trying to get used to the guys that are going to be around you, there is some level of importance to that. So that's why the offense has largely stayed away and the defense started to show up last week, because there's a difference, because there's so many new defensive guys. There could be 9 new starters on defense, where on offense, every starter's coming back, and your top backups like Kareem Hunt and Rashard Higgins and Kadarius Hodge and Donovan Peoples-Jones and David Njoku, they're all coming back. So I think there's a lot less need to be there. I would say overall it's beneficial for the guys on defense to finally get there and get with the coaches, but I don't think it's monumental.
So Baker Mayfield and a number of the skill position guys are not in Berea, but reports are, and we know that David Njoku and Baker Mayfield are 2 of the guys that are definitely in Austin working out together. Now there are some reports out there that Odell Beckham Jr. is also in Austin. Haven't been able to shake that out definitively. Jarvis Landry, Donovan Peoples-Jones as well. That kind of makes some sense because you can get there and get that familiarity, probably do even a little bit more with a smaller group of those skill position guys.
Yeah, the people I talked to about Baker holding this workout session, didn't know the exact guys that were going to be there. I'm sure it was an open invitation from Baker to a lot of the receivers and tight ends, maybe even the running backs. I think it's good just to stay kind of connected during the offseason, get on the field. And, I think some people ask, well, why in Austin, and they worked out some in Florida, Baker with some of the guys, including Jarvis Landry and Rashard Higgins and David Njoku in April, but why there and not in Berea? And, I think part of it's loyalty to J.C. Tretter, right? The center and the NFLPA president has been adamant and outspoken about how the offseason program should be changed and players should have every right not to show up for the voluntary portion of it. And then the other part is, at least in Berea, there's some going against defense, and I don't know how much one-on-one work they'll do tomorrow or that they did the last couple of days and tomorrow and Thursday. But in Texas, it's going to be offense, right? And it'll be Baker throwing to guys, running routes on air. And I think that's safer than, one-on-one or 7-on-7 or 11-on-11 if that's what the players are concerned about. They can do it at their own time. They can have fun off the field, right? I'm sure when it's over, the guys hang out, they go to dinner, they go to bars, whatever they do. I think there's some bonding element to it. So, I think it's good if you're not going to be in Berea, and I don't have any fault with the guys choosing to do that rather than showing up in Berea, especially given the circumstances of having gone through it last year and having everyone coming back again this year.
You bring up an interesting point. With Tretter being the head of the NFLPA, there's a certain loyalty that you want, not only the players, but, Kevin Stefanski and them. You want Tretter to feel that his team at least respected, his stance. And I think that's kind of the fine line that the Browns are walking.
Yeah, I completely agree. And I think Kevin Stefanski's handled it well. And Andrew Berry, when we've talked to him about it, has handled it well because they respect JC and they know it's important. And they know that the union president is a key job. It's an important job. And I think some coaches, maybe some coaches the Browns have had in the past and some coaches across the league would really bristle if their guy, one of their starting guys, key guys, being the president of the union. I don't think that would go over well. But I don't think the Browns organization is like that when it's run by Andrew Berry and Kevin Stefanski. And I think that's a good thing. And I do think the players and the coaches, and I don't know if compromise is too strong a word, but we're able to kind of agree that If you want to be in Berea, that's fine. We respect that. If you want to get your work in elsewhere, we respect that. And there's a little bit of and it's not division, but there's a line between offense and defense for all the reasons we mentioned earlier about continuity on offense and lack of continuity on defense.
Yeah, and I think what it is that they at least understand the other side's position and are willing to at least, okay, I get what you're saying, so, that's good. And I think it's really good for the organization. Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle Telegram, as well as BrownsZone.com. You can see all of his stuff there. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, David Njoku with some Instagram video from down in Austin. We may have another Brown retiring from yet another sport. And we'll also talk to Scott to see who he thinks might get extended first. Sports for CLE will return. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
Sports for CLE continues. I'm Dave Bacon. We continue talking Browns football with Elyria Chronicle Browns beat reporter Scott Petrak. You can also find Scott's work on BrownsZone.com. Also hosts the Zone Coverage podcast. Scott, Browns are due a number of guys who will get contract extensions, kind of the foundation that they'll build around. Who do you think gets extended first? I know you've written about this. So, and the thought behind what could happen here.
Yeah, I think it's Baker Mayfield gets extended first, but, I would not bet a ton of money on that. My thinking is the Browns want the salary cap certainty of having their highest paid player under contract, and that would be Baker for whatever he signs for, whether it's $35 or $40 or $45 million a year, he's going to be the highest paid guy. And I think as an organization, it would benefit the Browns to know that and to know it as soon as possible. And I would still expect that contract to get done before this season, whether that's, July 27th as training camp starts, whether it's August 15th or September 1st. I think it'll get done before the season. Now, I don't guarantee that because the Browns could want to wait until Lamar Jackson and Josh Allen sign so they know better what the market looks like. Baker could want to wait to see what those guys signed for so he knows what the market looks like, or he could simply want to bet on himself. And in my opinion, if Baker signs a month from now or 6 weeks from now, maybe the contract comes in at $35 million a year, which is less than Dak Prescott, less than Deshaun Watson, less than Patrick Mahomes. If he waits and the Browns go to the Super Bowl or the AFC Championship game and Baker plays really well, then you're probably looking at, is it 42? Is it 45 million a year? And that's a big jump, right? Let's call it $7 million a year for the next 5 years. That's $35 million. So, this part of you says, okay, we'll just lock it up for right now. You get $35 million, and I'm just using these numbers. You get $35 million a year right now, lock it in. But it wouldn't stun me if Baker said, you know what, I'm going to wait if he feels like there's that big a discrepancy between what he would sign for this offseason versus what he would sign for next offseason. And then if it's not Baker, to me, it's a no-brainer. It'd be Nick Chubb. He's entering the final year of his rookie contract where Baker and Denzel Ward have those fifth-year options that were picked up. I think you want to get Nick Chubb under contract. I understand running back. Some teams are leery to pay guys a second contract at that position. And I think analytically the Browns would be leery. But I just think Nick Chubb is such an exception and such a good player and a good worker and kind of the model Brown that I think the Browns need to sign him to an extension.
The one thing is Andrew Berry has shown he's not afraid to necessarily go against analytics, which is why I think I think this might be an instance where he says there's analytics and then there's what I feel about football, and I feel about football we need Nick Chubb.
And I think you're right, and I think Nick Chubb himself is such an exception because he's a top, 2 or 3 running back in league, whatever however you rank him. And then, like I said, he's such a model guy. Like when you talk to players and coaches around the team, like they point to Nick Chubb as, okay, that's how you should act. And I just think it sends a terrible message to a young team, a team that's building toward what they believe are championships, to say, yeah, this guy did all the right things, but we don't think he's worth paying. I just think that sends a bad message. And I think Andrew Berry fully appreciates that.
Yeah, and I agree with you on all those points. So we're going to check in. Voicemail of Truth and Reason. We always let our viewers voice what they have. Take a listen. Voicemail of Truth and Reason regarding Baker Mayfield.
Yeah, hi, it's Bill from Santa Clara, California. A couple things about Baker. One is he's got a worrying trait where during running plays he runs behind the runner, usually Chubb, and not far away from the play, like maybe 5 yards at the most. He's running along with him, and I just worry that the opposing defenses are going to see a chance to hit him really hard. And the other thing I worry about with Baker is OBJ. He's coming back. He's a wonderful receiver, but if he has too much influence on Baker, where Baker's always looking for him and waiting for him, because last year it screwed Baker up when OBJ was playing. It messed up his decision-making process. So I hope that this year that won't happen. And if it does happen, I'd get rid of him. Anyway, get rid of OBJ, obviously, not Baker. So there you go. Thank you. Bye-bye.
All right, Scott Petrak, just your reaction to those 2 points.
Yeah, I thought the first one was interesting. We've all seen Baker do that, and Baker kind of gets celebrated a little bit because he's following Chubb and he's celebrating. He's right behind him. He looks like he's running fast. But that probably leaves him somewhat susceptible. I haven't seen anybody take a cheap shot at Baker yet, so maybe Baker feels he's safe. And, the defensive guys know better than to take a cheap shot because they could be penalized. But I wouldn't oppose to Kevin Stefanski or Stump Mitch or Alex Van Pelt saying, hey, why don't you just stay a little bit out of the fray there? Just better safe than sorry. I understand that argument. And then regarding OBJ, it's such a fascinating discussion to me because I understand that Odell probably influenced Baker in 2019 and maybe even the beginning of 2020 because Odell has that type of personality. Baker is such a young quarterback, especially when you look back at 2019. I never bought into the philosophy or the train of thought that Baker was better off without Odell because I think Odell is that talented a player, and I think he does so much for the offense, whether it's running deep routes that open things underneath or running the jet sweep action that opens things up in the middle for the run game. I just think you don't find players that talented, and I think you're almost always better off when you have talented players like that. Having said all that, I think Baker did benefit from having success last year without OBJ. Not that he wouldn't have had success if OBJ had stayed healthy, But the fact that Baker and the offense succeeded and went to the playoffs and won a playoff game in Pittsburgh without Odell, I think that gives a level of confidence to Baker and the rest of the offense, maybe even the coaching staff, that we don't have to force the ball to Odell and we're going to be okay. And I think maybe Odell sees that too and says, okay, they were okay without me. Let me just add what I can to this mix. And it can be great. And in some games it will be great, like that Dallas game last year. In some games it won't be, because that's how it's going to work. And hopefully Odell is maybe matured a little bit in that regard. Not that, I've never had a problem with Odell since he's been with the Browns. I think he's been a fine teammate. I think Baker really enjoys him. I think a lot of guys really enjoy him. But I understand that thinking and how Baker maybe even subconsciously tilted the field toward Odell. And I just think a more mature Baker, a Baker who's had more success will be less tempted to do that.
Yeah, I would agree. And the only thing I would say about him kind of following behind Chubb, my guess is it's in case the ball comes out and he wants to maintain possession. That would be the only thing I would think he would be following Odell about. So last week when Kevin Stefanski met with the media, he retired Myles Garrett from basketball, or at least announced it. From the Instagram account of David Njoku from Texas, Austin, Texas, where he's at Camp Mayfield, well, let's take a look at this one. And this is kind of interesting. So platform diving into a lake. And let's take a look at Njoku, outstanding athlete, getting ready. And it didn't really get the good rotation there. You want to go in and kind of break it perpendicular, and he was kind of horizontal. So the tight end here, the Chief, needs to work on getting a little bit more rotation on the dive. But Scott, I can only imagine that Kevin Stefanski may be retiring another athlete. It'll be interesting to see if he gives him a medal for that. I'm guessing the Russian judge kind of, that's going to be tough to grade him, above a 5 on that one.
Yeah, you're completely right about that. And, David, training camp conflicts with the Tokyo Olympics, so I don't think Njoku's going to make the trip over there. But, there's so many thoughts. First of all, I'm not a swimmer, so I'm not a dive guy. I don't know how dangerous that is, but it doesn't look extremely safe. I did find it interesting that Stefanski said that and was kind of clear and adamant about Myles a week ago, because Myles loves playing basketball. So I kind of interpreted it as, when we get this close to the season, quit playing basketball. Next offseason, I would be stunned if Myles didn't return to the pickup games, because I think he loves it that much. And I think the Browns would have a hard time convincing him not to do it unless there's a big stipulation in his contract that they really want to enforce. So, I think anytime a coach sees a guy do something that can be dangerous or looks dangerous or even seems goofy, I think they get worried about it, because that's what coaches do, especially this time of the year where players have as much free time as they do, that especially that break between the end of minicamp and training camp. I know coaches are just worried about getting a phone call, whether it's guy got into trouble, whether it's a guy got hurt, whether it's whatever. The coach, and that's another reason coaches like to have guys in the facility during the offseason program, is because they feel like they have more control of their guys.
Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegraph, as well as you can read his work on brownszone.com. He also hosts the Zone Coverage podcast. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we'll hear from a national reporter who thinks the Browns are definitely Super Bowl contenders. And we'll also take a look at the AFC rankings after the Julio Jones trade to the Titans. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
COVID-19 has changed how we show up and show out with our family. Now it's time to take the first step that lets us get back to talking smack with a side of mac and cheese.
Before we can safely come together, we need the facts.
As COVID-19 vaccines become available, you may have questions.
Should I get it?
Is it safe?
Should I wait?
It's smart to question. Now, get the facts at getvaccineanswers.org so you can make an informed decision when vaccines are available to you.
Sports4CLE continues. We continue talking Browns with Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegraph, Scott Petrak. So, Scott, Good Morning Football on the NFL Network. All three of their hosts agree Browns are Super Bowl contenders. Let's take a listen.
Down under or down over, the Cleveland Browns, this is so fun to say, are a legitimate Super Bowl contender in the AFC. Aditi Kingabwala.
I'm taking the over on this one. I buy that. Look, this offense really started clicking as the season went on. Baker Mayfield played a better second half of the season than just about anybody. They get Odell Beckham Jr. I say that.
So, Scott, it's pretty consistently among the national people. They're buying the Browns as legitimate Super Bowl contenders. How do you respond to that?
I agree. You have a roster that I think ranks with the best ones in the league. You have a coach who was coach of the year in his first season in the job. You would think he would only get better, which means he's a top whatever coach in the league. And then you look at quarterback, and if Baker plays like he did at the end of last season, that makes him a top 10 or 12 quarterback in the league. And if you play like that with the roster around him and talent around him, then, yeah, you're a Super Bowl contender. And they went to the second round of the playoffs last year. So I think all things point in that direction. I don't think the Browns have taken a step back really probably in any area since the end of last season. Maybe you can talk about defensive tackle because they lost both their starters, but it was their decision to lose both of them. So, I think they're poised. I think they're in the discussion with, Chiefs, Ravens, Bills, Titans, Packers, and obviously the Buccaneers, the defending champ.
Well, it's like you're looking at our rundown here because the Bleacher Report has come out with the rankings for the AFC post-Julio Jones trade from the Falcons to the Titans. And they have the Chiefs 1, Bills 2, Ravens 3, Browns 4, Titans 5, and Colts 6. And again, the AFC is so top-heavy with those teams. It is going to be very interesting to see how that all shakes out.
There's no doubt. And I think I would have the rankings the same. To me, there's the Chiefs, and then there's a gap to the rest of the AFC. They've been to the last 2 Super Bowls. They have probably the best quarterback in the league in Pat Mahomes, who's young and just getting into his prime. But I think the Browns belong with those other teams. And I agree with the Titans. The Julio Jones trade, and who knows if Julio is going to work out in Tennessee, right? He's 32 years old. He's missed time with injuries. But if he's the Julio Jones that we saw in Atlanta for all those years, I think that really bumps up the Titans to where they're in that next tier with the Browns, Ravens, and Bills. And that's how I see it. Then after that, you got the Colts, maybe you have Pittsburgh, depending on how steeply you think they're going to drop off. But yeah, to me, it's the Chiefs and then that group of teams. And it's really going to be fascinating because, especially when you look at 2, 3, and 4, there's a lot of young quarterbacks, right? I mean, they're the same draft class: Josh Allen, Lamar Jackson, Baker Mayfield. And a lot comes down when you get to the playoffs on how your quarterback plays. Now, it's not all about that. And I don't think Baker necessarily needs to outplay Patrick Mahomes or Josh Allen for the Browns to win in the playoffs, but he needs to play really well. Like, I think the roster can support Baker, but when push comes to shove, whether it's a big Sunday night game against the Ravens or it's in the playoffs against the Chiefs, Baker's going to have to make several big plays for the Browns to go where they want to go.
Yeah, I would agree. When you get that close, there's a handful of plays. If your quarterback makes them, you win. If your quarterback can't make them, the other team usually wins. This one's interesting. This is posed by dogpounddaily.com. So the question is, could the Browns get a similar haul for Odell Beckham that the Falcons got for Julio Jones? So for Julio Jones, they got a second-round pick and a fourth-round pick the next year in 2023, and they gave up a sixth-round pick in 2023. So one, do you think they could get a similar haul for Odell? Two, do you think the Browns have any interest in doing that if they could get a second and upgrade from like a sixth to a fourth?
I do think they could get the same haul. I just don't think they have any interest in doing that. And to me, that's not enough. And, there are other factors in play for the Falcons. They wanted to get rid of Julio Jones' contract, and the Titans were willing to take that on. And Odell has a similar contract, but the Browns have salary cap space and have been shown no inclination to get rid of Odell, whether it's his contract or him as a player/person. And they've been really consistent about that. So, I know Odell's name by itself generates conversation. I know he hasn't been everything the Browns hoped since they traded for him, and that's largely based on injuries. But I think the Browns want to ride it out. I think they want to see what a healthy Odell looks like in 2021 with a better developing Baker Mayfield and a team that's got Super Bowl expectations. And in my opinion, if the Browns traded Odell, all of a sudden they'd have a hole at number one receiver. And that's a big spot to have a hole in. And people can say, hey, they won games and played well as an offense after Odell got hurt. And that's true to some degree, but I think Odell makes them better. I think Odell makes the run game better. I think he makes Jarvis Landry better. And number one receivers just don't fall off trees, or don't grow on trees. So I think the Browns are happy to have Odell.
Yeah, I would agree. If they don't get a number one pick, at least a number one, first-round pick, I don't think they even entertain that. And I couldn't agree with you more. The other thing that you brought up kind of on the periphery, Andrew Berry's done a really good job managing the salary cap. And if you want to see places that haven't, look at the Falcons, look at the Saints, look at some of the people they've had to get rid of. That's why he made some tough decisions with Sheldon Richardson and the like.
Now, that's a good point. And, it's going to get tougher for him given the Baker Mayfield extension, the Nick Chubb extension, the Denzel Ward extension. Maybe a guy like Wyatt Teller, who's entering the the last year of his rookie deal, maybe he doesn't get an extension because you have to draw the line somewhere. Now, I think that's yet to be determined. Some of it depends on how Teller plays this season because he's only had one really good year in the league. But I could see that. I could see Andrew Berry saying, hey, we've already spent enough on the offensive line. We can find somebody to play right guard. I'm not saying that'll happen, but those are the kind of decisions he will have to make just because you're going to have to pay your quarterback $35 or $40 million a year. And Miles is making $25 million a year. And Denzel Ward's going to make $18 or $20 a year. So it's going to become more difficult, but Andrew Berry's in a good spot right now. And to me, the decision to release Sheldon Richardson was all about maintaining cap flexibility. And that's something that they really value. And I think they'll try to keep that as they go on, but it's going to be harder and harder just given the contracts that some of their best players are going to command.
Browns beat reporter Scott Petrak and I are going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, Scott and I will talk about PFF's coaches ranking. That is out. Kevin Stefanski, obviously on it in the top 10. We will also talk a little bit more about Sheldon Richardson. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us. Sports4CLE continues. We continue talking with Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter for the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. You can also catch his work, brownszone.com, zone coverage podcast as well. Scott, so PFF ranked the top coaches, and I am corrected. They only ranked the top 7. Kevin Stefanski did make it into the top 7 at number 7. So it goes Andy Reid, John Harbaugh, Matt LaFleur, Sean McDermott, Sean Payton, Bill Belichick, and then Kevin Stefanski. It's pretty good company to be in for a guy that's coached 1 year in the NFL.
It really is. I'm surprised he made it that high. Mike Tomlin, I would think would make that list. I know guys love to play for him, and you can question some of Mike Tomlin's game decisions and whether or not he should go for it on 4th down or the 2-point conversions he likes to go for. But guys want to play for him, and it struck me this year. I did a lot of Zoom call interviews with draft prospects. It's like, because they didn't have the combine, that's what we did. And I was amazed at the number of guys who singled out meeting Mike Tomlin over Zoom is one of the highlights of the process. So, I think Mike Tomlin should be on that list. I don't know how you have Bill Belichick number 6 when he's Bill Belichick, but I'm sure PFF had their reasons.
Yeah, and again, Stefanski's the only guy that was a rookie coach last year that made it onto that list, and there are a couple younger ones, McDermott and LaFleur, but good for him. I mean, he definitely deserved Coach of the Year, especially he won't have those challenges as a first-year head coach. No first-year head coach will have the challenges that last year's did in front of them. Pro Football Focus also ranked the linebacking unit. And Browns didn't fare too well in this one, 27th as a unit. And based on what they had last year, I could see that. Based on what they brought in, I think this is going to be a pretty improved group.
Yeah, and I know that's what the Browns are counting on to happen. I mean, Anthony Walker, they consider an upgrade over B.J. Goodson. And, I think if you look at PFF rankings, they had Goodson higher than Walker last year, but the Browns thought Walker's faster than Goodson. That's something they really value at that position. They went out and got him. He's extremely smart. I think he's going to be a leader of that defense. Jeremiah Owusu-Koramoah, I thought he'd go in the top 20 of the draft, or real close to the top 20. The Browns get him at 52. You can quibble about his size, but the Browns don't have an issue with that. They believe he fits exactly what they want to do at that weak side linebacker spot. They have Jacob Phillips, who's a 3rd-round pick a year ago. They re-signed Malcolm Smith, the veteran, who was really good in nickel a year ago. They still have Taki. So, I think there's some depth there. I think there's some talent there. And I'd be shocked if they only finished in the bottom 3rd of the league at that position.
Yeah, I would tend to agree. I really like Walker. I think that's a really undervalued move, and I think Koramoah is it's what linebackers are going to become because of all of the throwing that the NFL is doing. All right, let's talk a little bit about Sheldon Richardson. Do you think he hasn't signed anywhere? We know, the Browns liked him. We know it was a salary cap move. Any chance at all you think he comes back and signs with the Browns?
I've started to crack the door open. When he left, I thought there was no chance at all. And I know what the Browns said and continue to say. We'd love him back. We loved having him here for the right deal. Yeah, we would take Sheldon back and we'd welcome him back. It just seemed to me that when a guy was set to make about $12 million and you cut him and they're probably only willing to re-sign him for, let's say, $3 or $4 million, that's a big pay cut. And it's one thing to take it from a different team than take it from the team that cut you and said, well, we really have salary cap space and we really like you, but we're still going to cut you anyway. And I just think would be against human nature. Now, maybe Andrew Berry and Sheldon Richardson and Chris Kiffin, the D-line coach, have such a good relationship that they can mend those fences or they can make it work out okay for Sheldon Richardson and he would be accepting of that kind of deal. I am surprised that Sheldon hasn't signed somewhere else because I thought he played at a high level last year, maybe borderline Pro Bowl from that defensive tackle spot. And for him not to be signed this late in the offseason surprises me. So, if we get on the doorstep of training camp and Sheldon is not signed elsewhere, it wouldn't stun me if he came back. I just still think there will be a team that's willing to pay him more than the Browns are willing to pay him. And they've made a bunch of moves at that position, which I don't think the players are better than Sheldon. I just think they could live without him.
Scott Petrak, Browns beat reporter from the Elyria Chronicle-Telegraph. Scott, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks so very much for joining us. Thanks very much. Appreciate it, man.
Thanks for having me, Dave.
All right, Scott Petrak. Again, you can read him in the Elyria Chronicle-Telegram. Also, BrownsZone.com. He also hosts the Zone Coverage Podcast. Scott Petrak. We're going to step aside, take a quick time out. On the other side of the break, we will be joined by WTAM's Jake Underwood. We'll talk a little bit of Browns. We'll also talk a little bit of Indians. Sports for CLE. We'll be right back. Stay with us.
Life is starting to get back on track, and you can too. If you or your family have experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Safely get the in-demand degree or training you need with online and on-campus classes. Go to tric-edu to check out our programs and resources. So, what are you waiting for? Register now for summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
As the COVID-19 vaccines become available, you might be asking yourself, should I get it? And if I do, will I be able to go about life without putting my family at risk? You've got questions, and that's normal. The fact is, the vaccines are safe and effective. They're going to save lives. To get the latest on the COVID-19 vaccines, visit getvaccineanswers.org, because getting back to the moments we miss starts with getting informed. It's up to you.
Thanks for hanging with us on Sports for CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We are going to continue talking Browns. We're going to welcome in Jake Underwood from WTAM. Jake, as always, appreciate the time, sir. Preseason schedule released. Browns will open up against the Jaguars. It'll be the preseason NFL debut for Urban Meyer. And then they bookend that, number 3, only 3 preseason games, Sunday night football game, primetime, in Atlanta against the Julio Jones-less Falcons. What do you make of the preseason schedule?
It's kind of what is to be expected. It's a little weird seeing the 3 games. It threw me off. I'm not going to lie. It threw me off a little bit. But what's really weird about it is that, it's not all Saturday games. We have an 8:00 game here on a Sunday, a 1:00 on a Sunday. So that's a little bit weird. But, I'm excited that it's Urban Meyer's first game, and it just so happens to be against the Browns. I'm excited to see what Urban Meyer is going to do in Jacksonville. So it's going to be pretty cool to see at week 1 of the preseason.
I would, I don't know for certain because we haven't been able to talk to a lot of the players about it yet. I would guess they're pretty happy that the preseason is down to 3 weeks. You also have the gap between the last preseason game and the first regular season game. It's now basically 2 weeks.
Yeah, it's weird to get used to, because we're so used to the 4th preseason game. So, now comes the question, which one's going to be the dress rehearsal? Is it going to be game 2 now? Are they going to be ready for it, to kind of take that next step to kind of move up a game earlier? So it's going to be an interesting development to see how they can adjust to it. But NFL teams have adjusted to it before. So I don't know if it's going to be too much of an issue for them. But, I'm excited to see this team with a full training camp with the full off season with the same coaches. You don't have to worry about COVID anymore. They can actually practice. It's going to be, I'm excited to see them this preseason.
All right, so 6 new AFC North players that the Browns should worry about. This is the list that we have. So number 1, Tylan Wallace, wide receiver, Ravens. Number 2, Ardarius Washington, safety, Ravens. 3, Sean Wade, cornerback, Ravens. 4, Odafe Owe, formerly Jason Owe, edge rusher of the Ravens. So we have 2 more. So the Ravens have some young players that are on this list. Who of those really, really concern you?
Definitely the linebacker Owe. He's so big. He's got that NFL size. Sean Wade, he was inconsistent, and I don't want to say he didn't show up against big schools, because that just seems so unfair to say, but he was a little bit inconsistent at Ohio State, and I don't know how he's going to do against NFL wide receivers. So it's going to be interesting to see how that can work. I think that definitely favors the Browns. But the 2 wide receivers, they're a good size. They're a good size for them, for the Ravens, and that's what Lamar Jackson needs. Now, what's interesting to me about those guys, while they can catch, they're quick, they run good routes for the most part, they can't run block to save their lives. And you have a running quarterback. So it's going to be interesting to see what happens when Lamar Jackson gets out into the open field, if these guys are going to be able to hold the block or not. And because say what you want about Hollywood Brown, but he could run block. He maybe struggled catching, but he can run block for the most part and open up those lanes for Lamar Jackson. Not that he needs the help, but I think the 2 wide receivers, and especially Chase, the one that the Bengals drafted, there it is, couldn't think of him, but he's another one where he already has that chemistry with Burrow. Those are the 3 guys. Ironically enough, they're all wide receivers, but those are the guys I'm most worried about.
Yeah, that's fair. So Jamar Chase, and also on that list was Rashad Bateman from the Ravens as well. So Bateman and Wallace, 2 draft picks. Let's shift our focus just a little bit. So LaDainian Tomlinson, Hall of Fame running back, ranked the top 5 running backs in the NFL. Number 1, Derrick Henry. Number 2, Dalvin Cook. Number 3, Alvin Kamara. Number 4, Saquon Barkley. And number 5, Christian McCaffrey. Not on this list, Nick Chubb.
That's so unfair. It's so unfair to not have him on the list. And I don't know if it's because he's splitting time with Kareem Hunt that he's not on the list. But if that's the case, then Alvin Kamara shouldn't be on there. All of those guys that are above him seem to have injury issues for the most part. And what concerns me about Derrick Henry, we all know how good he is, but to me, I don't know if you remember Larry Johnson with the Chiefs, but he would just get so many carries season after season after season, and it just ended up he just disappeared one year. And I kind of think that's what's going to happen with Derrick Henry, but it's so unfair to not have Nick Chubb in that top 5 just because of how consistent he is. He can catch the ball out of the backfield and make things happen. We saw that against the Steelers. His touchdown on that screen pass pretty much put that game away. So I just think it's one of those, and I hate to say it, but, because he's a Brown, he's not going to get the recognition that he deserves. But we're kind of used to that here in Cleveland. So I think at the end of the season, we're going to see that he deserves to be in the top 5. We already know it as fans. You look at Nick Chubb's stats, they're better than Saquon Barkley's. He's been more consistent than Saquon Barkley. Saquon Barkley has that higher ceiling for the most part, but Nick Chubb has just been more consistent and he shows up to play. He's got more touchdowns, more rushing yards. There's no reason why Nick Chubb should not be in the top 5.
Where do you think where should he fit? So the way they actually ranked him was McCaffrey, Barkley, Kamara, Cook, Henry. They ranked Henry 5th, which I thought was a little low as well. Where do you slot Chubb into that mix?
Personally, when I made mine, I had McCaffrey at 1. Just because he's so versatile. It's insane how good that guy is out of the backfield. He can make anything happen. Then I had Derrick Henry at 2, just because he is explosive with the ball in his hands. And he's a big guy. A lot of people don't realize, he's 6'2", and he's able to do the things that he is and run as fast as he is. And I have Nick Chubb at 3. I think that's a fair spot to have Nick Chubb at. He's definitely in the top 5. I don't know if the offense has the success that they do without Nick Chubb. So I think it's only fair to have him in the top 3 because I think besides Baker, he's the most valuable player on the team just because the offense goes as far as Nick Chubb takes them.
Yeah, and I think the other thing is some people will ding him a little bit because of the offensive line, but offensive line and running back usually go hand in hand. A running back without a good offensive line usually isn't a good running back.
Right. I'm not going to hold it against Emmitt Smith that he had Larry Allen at guard. There's no reason to hold it against him that the offensive line's good. I don't know why that would go against him. That's very odd. I didn't think of it that way, but more than likely, yeah, that's a great point.
Jake Underwood from WTAM and I are going to step aside, take a quick timeout. On the other side of the break, we will shift our attention to the Indians. Tribe getting ready to open up a 2-game series in St. Louis against the Cardinals, 8:15 tonight. Sports4CLE will be right back. Stay with us.
Better days are ahead. Be ready with the training you'll need to get a great job. If you or your family has experienced financial hardship as a result of COVID-19, Tri-C can help with full tuition assistance. Whether you want to improve your skills, get certified, or train for a new career, go to tri-c.edu to check out our programs and resources. So what are you waiting for? Register now for online and on-campus summer classes. Tri-C is where futures begin.
When it comes to selling you a mattress, most retailers are handing you a line. A long line of extra steps that drive up costs and create confusion. At the Original Mattress Factory, we simplify the mattress shopping experience by building mattresses and box springs in our own local factories and selling them direct to you. It's short, sweet, and simply makes sense. So experience more than just the mattress store. Experience an original, the Original Mattress Factory.
First, they said cigarettes were safe. We know how that turned out. Now, they say they didn't market e-cigarettes to teens. Fact, more than 1 in 4 high school students are vaping, and 80% say their first e-cigarette was flavored. Vaping is harmful to developing brains. The reason we think vaping is safe? Marketing. Same lies, different day. Tell Big Vape to quit lying.
Welcome back for Sports4CLE. I'm Dave Bacon. We're going to talk a little bit about the Indians getting ready to open up a quick 2-game series against the St. Louis Cardinals. Shane Bieber will get the start tonight. Bobby Bradley was recalled from Columbus over the weekend. Jake Bauer designated for assignment. First few at-bats in the big leagues this go-round for Bobby Bradley were pretty good. He talked about kind of his approach to get back to the big leagues.
It was tough. I mean, just as it would be with, just any situation with going down. But, just knowing that I'm in a good spot and knowing that one day I was going to be able to come up and help these guys win. It's actually less pressure now. In my case, it's like they with all the moves that happen, it's just like now they're looking at me and it's like I get to settle in and just get comfortable and play my game. The first, debut jitters and stuff, just being around all the guys that you used to watch on TV. So all the starry-eyed moments are kind of gone. And now it's just I'm another one of the guys and I just get to go out and have fun. A lot of unlucky at-bats with hitting balls right at people. But I felt like I was in a good spot for most of it, especially just mechanically and where I was. I had a little hiccup, probably the last 2 weeks, just kind of lost it, but found it again, and we're just keeping track on that, what we got.
I think when he first went back, it was a struggle for him. And we kind of understood that. I mean, we knew when we talked to him in spring training, it was kind of a bitter pill for him to swallow. So, again, part of it, you want to see how guys handle adversity, but we also knew that it could happen. Good part of it is he's been hitting for power and he's starting to swing the bat better lately.
Let's bring back in Jake Underwood from WTAM. And Jake, when you look at it, Indians need some sort of production from first base, and they just weren't getting it. So Bobby Bradley, and the interesting thing about Bradley, and he kind of touched on it, he debuted in the big leagues before the pandemic, so 2 years ago. Didn't play last year. and now came back up. So that's the gap between his major league debut and being up now. All he has to do is hit the ball. He's going to stay in the lineup and get to play. It's really that simple.
Yeah, it really is. And I was concerned with Bobby Bradley just because we all saw the people freaking out on Twitter. He's not even hitting 170. He's not even hitting 170 in the minors. So everybody was worried about it. Everybody was freaking out. I'm glad he was able to kind of ignore that. That's that outside noise that you're always going to hear when you're in the major leagues. What I'm nervous about with Bobby Bradley is everybody's expecting him to be that next big name, that Jim Thome type guy. And I don't think we're going to get that out of Bobby Bradley just because I don't know if he's that kind of player. And I think it's an unfair expectation to put on Bobby Bradley. I need Bobby Bradley to go out there and just play the way that Bobby Bradley does. So I like that he's comfortable. You just played the clip. If you go back and if you look at how he was at 19, he was very stiff. He's, I'm really happy to be here, a little robotic. And now, he's joking around a little bit. He just seems to be relaxed. I think he realizes he's good at this. And there's a reason why they called him up. And it's because he is good at playing baseball. He's just got to remember that, stay relaxed. And if he gets going, there's no telling what this lineup could do because you just need one person to get everything started. And we're hoping that's Bobby Bradley. And I think it could be.
Yeah, and there isn't that Jim Thome type hitter, at least in the above AA. AA doesn't have the guys that are going to crush it either. Their elite level hitters are single A and high A, so they're a couple years away. The one thing I would say about Bobby Bradley and the word we've gotten from the folks down in Columbus, when he starts hitting the ball to the opposite way, that means he's staying on the ball, he's driving it to right center in the middle of the field. He's locked in, and he's going to crush mistakes either way when he's locked in. So you've seen that a little bit in the first couple games. He's hitting the ball the opposite way. Those are good things. The bad things are when he starts pull happy and pulling off the ball.
Yeah, the strikeouts. The main concern for me is we know everybody strikes out. That's just the game of baseball right now. Nobody hits for contact anymore. Everybody's trying to hit it out of the park. So when you're hearing the concern about a guy is, hey, he strikes out too much, how much is he striking out? It ended up being 40% or close to it. So I can understand why there is that concern. He just needs to stay comfortable. I think we're seeing it with Owen Miller a little bit. He's starting to settle down a little bit more. Just don't overthink it. There's a reason why you're here, and it's because you're good at what you do. And sometimes everybody needs a reminder of that. So especially these guys, they're young. And, Bobby Bradley talked about it. He's up here with guys that he used to watch. I couldn't imagine having that type of pressure. And, this is something you waited for your entire life. So I think they have a tendency to put too much pressure on themselves. Tito's a good manager, so Tito will talk them back down to earth a little bit, calm down, take a deep breath, take it one swing at a time because that's all you could do. But if there's so much potential with Bobby Bradley and Owen Miller and those guys, and if they can reach half of it, the Indians are in a good spot.
Jake Underwood from WTAM, as always, appreciate the time and the insight. Thanks very much.
Thank you.
All right. And that'll do it for this edition of Sports4CLE. Want to remind you, Shane Bieber, Carlos Martinez, as the Indians open up a quick 2-game series against the Cardinals in St. Louis tonight in about 3 hours or so. We will see you again tomorrow. Sports4CLE, 4 o'clock. Jeff Risdon, Matt Derry, scheduled guests. Have a great night. We'll see you again tomorrow.